Alright, since I'm working on a big project that I don't want to spoil right now, I haven't really had the time to write, even a scripted video. So I thought that doing something like this would be a little bit of a treat to keep you guys tied over while I'm working on bigger, more expansive videos. Today we're going to do a tier list of every single Disney-Pixar film. I think. I'm not sure if every single one is on here. Looks like it has Onward, but it doesn't have Soul or Raya and the Last Dragon. I keep getting that film's title wrong. If you're wondering my opinion on Raya, I haven't seen that one yet. But here's what we're going to do. I'm just going to give you my feelings on all of the Disney-Pixar films. And it looks like some extra films, too. It looks like some of the sequels are on here and some aren't. A lot of people ask me a lot of questions about what I think of any individual animated Disney film. I haven't seen all of them, and I suppose that would be a good place to start. This tier list is in a very odd order, so I guess we'll start by saying that I haven't seen Raya and the Last Dragon. I'll just go from bottom to top. Haven't seen Frozen 2. Haven't seen Incredibles 2. Let's see. I have not seen Cars 3 because wasn't a biggest fan of the first couple of Cars. I haven't seen The Good Dinosaur because it got bad reviews and I'm not really interested in seeing that. I haven't seen Big Hero 6 because I'm not the biggest fan of superhero stories. Now, you know what I said about Tinkerbell, so I obviously haven't seen her films. Or this one, or this one, or this one. I've heard, to be fair, that she's been toned down a lot in her own films, but she acts more like a stereotypical Disney princess. I wouldn't know. Maybe at some point I'll watch them and see if they're good enough for review or anything like that. Haven't seen Planes. For most of the the Pixar sequel, prequel things, I have not watched them because they just, after watching Cars 2, which is probably the worst out of all of them, and even after watching Finding Dory, they just don't inspire any reason for me to actually want to watch them. Speaking of which, I haven't seen Toy Story 4, which I also hear isn't the best. I might watch Toy Story 4 at some point just to see what exactly they did. I haven't watched Bambi 2. I may have watched the Winnie the Pooh movies at some point in my life, but not recently enough to distinguish anything Winnie the Pooh. It all comes together in my mind, and I have no idea if I'm going to be bringing up things from the movies or the actual TV show. I think I watched the TV show a lot. I haven't watched The Jungle Book 2. Most of the Disney sequels I haven't seen, and, most of them aren't on here. Let's see here. I have not seen Fantasia 2000. Let's see. I have not seen The Rescuers Down Under. Now, here's a funny story. A decade ago, the Nostalgia Critic made his list of top 10 underrated nostalgic films. And The Rescuers Down Under was on that list, and he said it was a great film. Literally every single person who has ever talked about that film after he made that list says it was just garbage. So, that's just funny to me. I actually haven't seen The Great Mouse Detective. And I think that's all that I haven't seen. Oh, I have not seen the other Planes film, too. Just one check up to see. There might be a couple others that I'm a little iffy on, oh yeah, Winnie the Pooh. But otherwise, I'm pretty confident in whatever's left here. As far as I can see, I'm not really good at distinguishing a bunch of stuff right in front of me. And I guess the next question would be to go over the movies that I've already reviewed. I already reviewed Cars 2. That's an F. From what I know, that's actually probably the best F. Cars is... It's not an awful, awful, awful movie. It's still bad. Not just bad for Pixar, as some people like to claim. It's just run-of-the-mill incompetence. Like, it's bad in a way where you can riff it. You can make fun of the movie. Which is something that I can't really say for Chicken Little. Which is just abysmal. And I can't see it on this thing because... it's not in any sort of order for some reason. Chicken Little is just the most unpleasant of all of the Disney films. Like, just from what it's made of. It is so mean-spirited. Every character is just at each other's throats. And everyone's just so cutthroat. It doesn't feel like it belongs in a Disney film. Like, Disney gets a reputation for being all kid-friendly and stuff, and I can see how that goes too far in some films. And it will ruin other films on this list. But Chicken Little just goes too far in the other direction. When I watch a Disney film, I like to see something that's nice and pleasant and happy, at least for most of it. But Chicken Little is just something that makes me just feel wrong for watching it. Especially since I've had my own conflicts with my own parents, it hits doubly hard. Home on the Range is a Saturday morning cartoon. It's a bad Saturday morning cartoon. It's actually a Patreon reward. If I get a certain amount, I will eventually tackle it in its own review. Because I think it's at least ridiculous enough that would make a good review. There are some really, really bad Disney films that would not make a good review, and I will not be reviewing them. Like, one that's not on this list here, that's in the Disney animated canon, is Dinosaur. Dinosaur is also an F, but it's a film that I will never, ever, ever review, because Dinosaur is just a boring piece of shit. There's nothing you can say about Dinosaur. Like, take the good Dinosaur there, and just remove anything interesting to talk about. Let's see, what else? The Aristocats. The Aristocats is, Cutesy Cats, the movie. And I understand that there's an audience for Cutesy Cats, but in an actual, like, film that needs to have a story and everything, Aristocats is, like, one of the most boring films that I've ever watched. It also has this song, Everybody Wants to Be a Cat, that I absolutely hate because I can't stand the genre. And yes, it's a movie that has that... It has a couple of racist stereotypes because it came out in, like, the 70s, I believe. Either the 70s or the 80s. So, I guess I'm going through the F tier here. And I'm trying to see if there's anything else that I just throw into the Fs. Just right off the bat. Let's see. Da 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 da. Brother Bear we'll talk about soon enough, I guess. Let's see. And on the bottom of the list, we have Wreck-It Ralph 2. Ralph Breaks the Internet. Oh my fucking god. Like, I said that the Emoji Movie was mac and cheese. Ralph Breaks the Internet is like premium mac and cheese. If the Emoji Movie is Kraft mac and cheese, Ralph Breaks the Internet is premium mac and cheese. Ralph Breaks the Internet is literally the most incompetent Disney film that I have ever seen. Okay, so the point of the first movie is that going turbo is wrong and it's evil and it's something that we should not consider. Even considering going turbo gets you looked at funny. And Ralph Breaks the Internet, the main point is that Vanellope wants to go turbo. And that's good and nice and everything. And everyone needs to support her. Meanwhile, Ralph is just this destroyed character, this emotionally needy man-child that you don't even like watching because it gets to be kind of creepy. This movie has a subplot where Calhoun and Felix adopt the Sugar Rush kids when Sugar Rush goes down. And the subplot's not in the movie. Like, they set it up, and it's not in the movie at all. Like, it's almost funny that it's not in the film, because this movie is poorly made. It doesn't understand a thing about the internet, because if it did, it wouldn't decide to have the internet as an aesthetic. I'm just going to say this, and I don't know if this is an unpopular opinion. The internet aesthetically looks like shit in the 2010s and 2020s. It uses a style called corporate minimalism. Where they make everything basically look white, and they simplify everything as much as possible. Like, there's this funny internet video talking about Wreck-It Ralph, where Mr. Incredible is looking at all the heroes that Syndrome has killed, except it's not them, it's all of the logos that keep getting simplified and simplified and simplified. And that kind of art style is why the internet looks like absolute shit. All this movie is just like white and sterile, and it looks ugly as sin. Give the Emoji Movie this. At least it had bright colors in Candy Crush. Ralph Breaks the Internet is definitely a film that I want to review because, like, there's just a lot that I can say about it. Ralph makes these viral videos and, like, they get millions and millions of views in, like, a day. He like, makes 1 million of them, and that's absolutely ridiculous. But yeah, I think that's all of the ones that I can say I absolutely, abjectly don't like. To the point where it's just a D, or not a D, like it's just an F. Speaking of films that aren't on here, though, there's also the package films, which I have not seen. They are a part of the Disney canon. During World War II, Disney couldn't make a full-length film, so they made a bunch of films that were just a few shorts put together, like The Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad, and This Is Where They Get Sleepy Hollow. I haven't seen any of those, so I can't give my opinion on them. Although I will say that I'm not entirely interested in seeing them. They don't seem like my cup of tea. So, now that we got, like, the worst of the worst out of the way, like, if you like any of the other films on this list, don't worry. Like, unless I've missed something off the top of my head, they're not... Oh, wait. There is one more F. And that would be Pocahontas. Pocahontas is tone deaf. It is an incredibly tone-deaf movie. Like, it is super duper preachy. I'm not the biggest fan of the art style. The lyrics to some of the songs are juvenile. Like, Savages is one of the most popular songs of the movie. But if you actually listen to the lyrics, you get things like, he doesn't look like you or me, which means he must be evil. Yes, Pocahontas, that is what racism is. Thank you, you have enlightened us all. And can you believe that, like, Pocahontas was meant to be Disney's big feature film of that year, and Lion King was their little side project that wasn't meant to break the bank? Pocahontas was Disney's passion project at the time. And Pocahontas might be another one that I'll review at some point, but I'm not sure about that because a review of Pocahontas is bound to get very uncomfortable, and I'm not exactly the most confident person of speaking at it. Like, there's a lot of overt racism in other Disney films, but that's, like, intentional. Pocahontas is a movie that says it's above racism by playing both sides to the conflict of the Native Americans and the English settlers. Yeah, Disney, both sides were equally responsible in this conflict. Sure thing. So, some of the songs like Colors of the Wind are pretty decent. It's got a unique animation style that I don't like. And Pocahontas is probably bland as bread. I can't really say many good things about it, really. So, I guess now that those are out of the way, unless something else that I'm not seeing here, because once again, Black Cauldron. Let's just assume that's probably going to keep happening again and again and again, because I can't really differentiate objects in a huge pile. A lot of people like Black Cauldron, and I can understand that. It's got a nice medieval fantasy aesthetic. It's one of only a few Disney films that goes for that, and this goes for a very Dungeons and Dragons style aesthetic. It wanted to take a lot of chances. It was the first Disney film to use CGI at all. They were originally going to make it PG-13, but at the last second they chickened out and they destroyed the film. That's not why I don't like Black Cauldron. Black Cauldron has Gurgi. Any film that has Gurgi is a bad film. Gurgi is just one of the most annoying characters in the entire Disney canon, solely because of his voice, never mind his behavior. Every second that he's on screen, it's just a pain and a half. And the other characters aren't much better. It's been a long time since I've seen this film, so I don't remember their names. But the main hero is an arrogant prick. He's the male version of Kaylee from Quest for Camelot. Like, they are the same character. And they have the same problems. There's the bard who has the harp, his gimmick where every time he lies, it hurts him, if I remember correctly. That was an annoying running gag. The princess, while she has every excuse to be uptight, she is extremely uptight, and that's not exactly fun in a movie. I do like the creepier images in the film, so I would definitely rate it higher than most of the other ones. Actually, let's rank these. Chicken Little of all of these is the worst, followed by Pocahontas. Then we'll put Wreck-It Ralph. Ralph Breaks the Internet. Actually, no, I'll put Aristocats worse, because I'd rather be infuriated and confused than bored out of my fucking mind. And yeah, I would say of this lineup, that's a good bottom 7 right there. So let's see here. The last film on this, the newest film on this seems to be Onward. You guys all know that Soul would be S rank. It's my favorite film of all time. So, now that I got, the worst of the worst out of the way, what's left? I suppose, we should go with the classic Disney princess films, going in a roughly chronological order, starting with Snow White. Snow White is the most important animated film of all time. It was the first, it wasn't the first animated film ever, but it was one of the first. It was trailblazing. And it paved the ground for both Disney as a company and animation as an industry, a theatrical industry. and it put in a lot of tropes and cliches and formulas that we still see today. Like most trailblazers, though, Pocahontas has not aged very well. Snow White has not aged very well. Snow White is a very, very boring film. I've watched it recently because I was doing a Disney parody in writing, and Snow White is just some of the most tedious thing to watch. It's very simplistic. Like, it is by the numbers because it built the numbers. So if you go into it for historical purposes, yeah, I can see why you want to watch it. But it's not a movie that you ever watch for fun. Ever. So in my mind, that puts it in the C camp. Like, some people put it, like, at the top 10 Disney films because of how important it is, and I understand it's important, but this is ranking how much I actually like watching the films. And Snow White is a film that I never watch unless I absolutely have to. Sleeping Beauty fares a little bit better, like just a smidge. I like the art style a lot better, but the characters are worse, with the exception of the villain. The villain is like one of the first great Disney villains. And the art style is very, very nice. I love the climax with the dragon, but the Prince Philip, like, if you don't even know his name is Philip. He's boring as a turd. And Sleeping Beauty, like, I mean, she's so boring, her princess film isn't even named after her. Her name is Aurora. She is actually, if you don't include Pocahontas, she's probably the worst of the Disney princesses because she is just so boring. If her dress wasn't pink, she probably wouldn't be even in the princess lineup. And you might not even know this, but for most of the film, her dress is actually blue. The side characters, like the fairies, they're definitely a little bit better. I like them more than the dwarves. So I will, like, if it's a contest between the two, I would definitely watch Sleeping Beauty over Snow White. However, it's another film that I usually don't watch unless I have to. The only thing that brings it above Snow White, like on a logical scale here, is that climax. Fighting the dragon at the end is just... it's a really good climax. Even though Philip doesn't have a line at that point in the film. He, like, says literally nothing. And once you notice that, it's actually a little bit awkward how he says literally nothing. The other classic princess film is Cinderella. While I go looking for it, I will talk about it. Cinderella is definitely better than the other two. In fact, I would probably give it a B. She's a much better character. The villain isn't as good as she was in Sleeping Beauty. Like, Lady Tremaine is no Maleficent. But she's still an intimidating force, which is impressive considering that she's, a human being. The animal sidekicks, they do kind of give the movie a bit of a comedic edge. Unfortunately, they kind of make the movie a little bit unfocused. What elevates Cinderella above the other two is that Cinderella actually has a fucking personality. She's actually a character with wants and desires. And she's not just a vehicle for a plot. I mean, she's definitely not the most active heroine, but she's definitely more than the previous two. That just don't really have much of a character at all. Snow White cleans a house for some dwarves, and Sleeping Beauty pricks her finger on a spinning wheel and falls asleep. Cinderella actually goes through an emotional gamut. but there's not really much that I can say about Cinderella. Like, it's a film that's just like, I don't know, so ubiquitous that it's really hard to talk about my feelings on it without saying what everybody else has already said. Like, there's no new insights or anything that I can really give on it. So after that, if you discount Black Cauldron, which some people do, next is the Disney Renaissance princess films. And of them all, Beauty and the Beast definitely gets an S rank. It's an absolutely beautiful film. I can see why it was nominated for Best Animated Picture. It was the first animated film nominated for Best Picture. This is why I usually talk with a script. I'm not exactly good at going off the cuff, so pardon me mumbling and stumbling over my words a lot. Beauty and the Beast is a fantastic film. Belle is a really good character. Like, on the internet in the modern day and age, like, there's all kinds of jokes about her having Stockholm Syndrome. No. Belle is very assertive. She's much more assertive than any of the princesses before her. Like, she's only staying with the Beast at first because that was the only way to get him to release her father. Like, she makes active decisions and she lives with the consequences. And she falls in love with the Beast as the Beast falls in love with her. She's a very good character. She's not my favorite Disney princess, and this isn't my favorite princess film, but it is a damn close second. I can see why it is so well loved. And I can see why every single scene in the movie is basically iconic. And yes, the live-action remake is not good. It's like Beauty and the Beast, except none of the characters can sing, and they were more focused on fixing the quote-unquote plot holes than actually making a good film. When you watch Beauty and the Beast, you don't give a shit about Adam being turned into the monster when he was like 10 years old. Because the movie is so good, those plot holes don't become apparent. Like, every single movie, every single story, whatever, has flaws. This is something that both reviewers and viewers need to know. However, if the actual story, the actual reason you're watching the film is good enough, audiences will ignore them. Like, this is a weird quote to bring up, but like Ed Wood says in the movie, filmmaking is not about the tiny little details, it's about the big picture. Ed Wood was obviously not the best filmmaker, but it's the right idea. He was just too ignorant to all of the details that he never actually built up a big picture. Little Mermaid is another one that people kind of dunk on today because Ariel makes bad choices. Because, you know, we all need characters to be absolutely perfect at all times. Ariel sells out her feet and her voice to basically get with a guy that she just met. And yeah, that's a stupid thing to do. Ariel is a teenager. Teenagers do stupid things. And like, I don't see these characters as role models. They're fantasies, not role models. There is a difference here. And I think that Ariel is an endearing character. Because Ariel loses her voice, much of the film relies on her body language. Like Ursula says, don't underestimate the importance of body language. And it gives her a level of character that most other Disney princesses do not have. Including the other ones from the Renaissance era. And honestly, I would say that Ariel would probably be my second favorite Disney princess. At least if we discount the sequel, in which she completely abandoned all of her all of her principles just to replay the first movie again. But as an overall film, I'm probably going to put it on A. Like, very, very high on A. It's not one that I rewatch often because, I don't know, there are others that I like just a tad bit more. The other Renaissance princess film would be Aladdin, although that's technically a prince film. Aladdin is also in that almost S rank. Like, first we have to talk. Robin Williams as the genie. He absolutely makes this movie. Every second with him on screen is just absolutely phenomenal. Like, some of the references are quite a bit dated, but it's not like, playing Gex. The references that Robin Williams brings up don't distract from the film at all. Even if you don't kind of get it, because his character just works so well. Sorry, I'm pausing a bit. I'm drinking water so I don't lose my voice for the rest of my life. I also really like Aladdin as a character. What sets this movie a little bit back is because it is a liar revealed plot. Like, the point of the film is that Aladdin lies to Jasmine about being a prince, even though he did wish to be a prince. I don't know how that's neither here nor there. And the villain Jafar, while he looks intimidating, doesn't end up really doing much. He's not a big enough presence to really become like a Frollo or one of the bigger Disney villains. Like, maybe he'd make the bottom of a top 10 list of Disney villains just because he looks and acts pretty intimidating, but he just doesn't really do much in the film. But I really like Aladdin's aesthetic. I like the art style a lot, and I'm not entirely sure why. Aladdin himself is a very endearing character, I would say. And the songs. The songs in Aladdin are really fucking good. Like, even some of the better soundtracks, like Hunchback and Notre, they have at least like one dud song. I don't think a single song in Aladdin is bad. I haven't seen Return to Jafar, but I have seen the Aladdin series, and the Aladdin series was pretty good. Not something that I'd want to go back to, but I remember watching it and liking it as a kid. And then there's Aladdin 3. Aladdin 3 is a movie that I really like. It'd probably be in the B tier, because once again, it's that father-son relationship that really kind of speaks to me in a way that most other Disney films don't. I haven't seen the Cinderella sequels, if you're wondering, and Little Mermaid sequel would probably be very low. It'd probably be a D. Because it's just a repeat. Like, speaking of just a repeat, it's the exact same movie as the original, which docks you points. So I think that's all of the princess films from the Renaissance era. And I'm talking about the official ones. There are plenty of other films that have princesses and princes that aren't counted as quote-unquote official. Like, Atlantis has a princess. So after that, we get Princess and the Frog. I'll give that one a B. It's not one that I go to often. It just doesn't strike me as very memorable. I like it more than Cinderella. I definitely like it more than Cinderella. Mostly because of the songs. Prince Naveen, he's kind of, I don't know, not very endearing to me. I don't want to say bland, because he's not bland, but there's just nothing really I like to watch about him. The villain is the most interesting character of the film. And not that he's a bad villain, but that's because none of the other characters really jump out at me. Like, it is kind of a standard film. It's a very, very well-made standard Disney film. But, like, I don't know. Princess and the Frog just isn't one that I go to very often. Maybe it's the aesthetic. I'm not too into 1920s New Orleans kind of deal. Like, I prefer movies in faraway lands like Aladdin or completely fantasy worlds. Like, I live in the United States, and while I don't live in Louisiana, it's much closer to home than most other films in the Disney canon, which kind of brings it down in a little bit of preference for me. But I will say that it does have one of the better soundtracks of the straight-up Disney princess films. Next, we have Tangled. As a contrast, Tangled is my favorite Disney film. Not my favorite Disney film, my favorite Disney princess film, because of a lot of reasons. The soundtrack is probably its weakest element, but other than that, I like all of the characters. Rapunzel is my favorite of the Disney princesses. And all of the characters are just, they have really big personalities. With the exception of the villain, Gothel is a little bit on the side, but the heroes are really, really strong, especially, like I said, Rapunzel, but Flynn Rider and the horse, they're both really, they have this positive charisma about them. And it's just a delight to watch them on the screen. What makes this higher than Beauty and the Beast as a film to me is the aesthetic. Beauty and the Beast is a lot visually darker. It takes place mostly in the winter. It's a much colder film. While Tangled it's summer. Like a little bit of irony, but the kingdom that she takes place in is Corona. You know, like the sun's Corona. It's bright and summery, and I just love the colors within it. Now, people who like Tangled a lot tend to not like Frozen. Like, there's a bit of a contest between the two. And Frozen gets to see. Like, when I first watched Frozen, I was absolutely blown away like everyone else. I saw it in theaters. It looked amazing on the big screen. The big song, Let It Go, was an amazing song. It kind of came out of nowhere. Like, there was no indication that there was going to be a song, just next scene and then Let It Go. And even when I got out of the theaters, I said that it was the best Disney film since Hunchback. However, upon repeated viewings, Frozen's problems started to pile up more and more. Like, first of all, it has Hans, the twist villain. It wasn't the first time Disney did this, it wasn't the worst, but it arguably popularized that trope. And it is, like, the worst Disney trope there is. It has the fake-out death at the end, which, you know, these are just Disney cliches. This movie has a lot of plot holes, which do become more and more apparent as you watch more and more of it. And I know what I said about if the movie is good enough, it can distract you. The movie tries to do that with spectacle, which is something that wears down over time. The more that you see it, the less impressive that it gets. Then you notice songs like Fixer Upper, which is one of the worst songs in Disney history. And how none of the characters really stand out on their own. Like, part of the biggest problems of having a twist villain is that the villains don't end up having much character. Like, twist villains have two characters, one before the twist and one after the twist, and neither of them have enough time to establish who they really are. Like, I can't call it an awful film because it really is breathtaking to behold, but it's just not the most structurally sound film. It's kind of like the opposite of Snow White. I would rather watch it over Snow White and even Sleeping Beauty. But while Snow White never takes a lot of chances, Frozen does take a lot of chances, and not all of them pan out. Actually, on the opposite end of that, we have Moana, which takes no chances at all. Moana, like I said that Snow White is the most standard by the numbers Disney film. In my opinion, Moana is the second most. Like, besides being in Polynesia, which isn't too different of a setting than Lilo and Stitch's, which takes place in Hawaii, Moana doesn't do anything unique. Maui's character arc, his whole thing, seemed very similar to even Hercules. And Moana, she's a princess who's stuck in a place that wants to go out into the world, but she can't because of whatever. So that's Jasmine, that's Tangled, that's Belle, that's Ariel, that's Cinderella, that's all the princesses. Like, every single one of them. Not helping is, besides the scene with the crab, I forget his name at the moment, which is definitely a visual spectacle and delight. The rest of Moana is a very visually boring film. 90% of the film is clear oceans and clear skies, which means that 90% of the film is just blue. Just blue. That's it. Like, besides that one brief bit of color, it is like one of the most visually boring of the Disney films. The plot isn't very focused. Like, the term big-lipped alligator moment gets thrown around a lot, but there's just this moment where they're fighting off coconut pirates that come out of nowhere and then never appear again in the entire film. They're never even mentioned again. It's just a brief blip of whatever, and then they move on. I mean, most of the songs in the film are at least decent, but, like, Moana was just, like, it's a movie that never got started for me at all. So, there's also Brave, which gets a D because there's nothing about it that I want to watch again. So, I guess that ended on a dour note. We should pick some of my favorites. Like, my favorite Disney film, not Tangled like I said before, my favorite Disney film is The Hunchback of Notre Dame. Hunchback of Notre Dame, put it all the way over here. Not only does it have the best soundtrack of the entire canon, with the exception of that one song, yes, I think it has the best visuals of the entire canon, one of the best villains, and I really even do like most of the other characters. Like, a lot of people complain about the tone. Like, half the film is childish, slapstick and stuff, and the other half of the film is very, very dark, like, darker than Disney's ever been. Like, this character knows he's going to hell, like, literal hellfire. But something about me, like, really, really likes that. Like, I like stories that are a mix of childhood and adulthood. And this film, it doesn't do it the best, but both of those sides really do speak to me. Like, I like a film that has a lot of both, and I try to put that into a lot of creations that I make. I just try to mix them a little bit well. I don't know how much more I can say about Hunchback of Notre Dame that hasn't been said before, though. It's just a beautiful, breathtaking film that I would recommend to just about anyone. Actually, I don't want to say that, because it's a film that you definitely need a certain taste for. Once again, like Soul, which would, once again, it would be above Hunchback. Let's see. Now, other than Soul, WALL-E is my favorite Pixar film, because I'm beginning to believe that WALL-E may be one of the most important films of all time. Like, this is a film that everybody should watch, because it goes into the themes of sacrificing freedom for a very sterile and lazy, controlled life where you're staring at screens all day because there's a disaster outside that you don't want to actually fucking deal with. What I'm saying is that WALL-E is a very relevant film, more relevant than most films. I wish that politicians watched WALL-E and took advice from WALL-E rather than Contagion, which, yes, actually happened. Some politicians watched the movie Contagion and modified their response to the pandemic based on a movie. Yeah, that actually happened because we live in the stupidest time in history. So, with that being said, Cars gets the D because it is another boring film that I don't want to watch ever again. Same with The Rescuers. Is there any other boring ones that are so boring that I don't even really want to talk about? Let's see. Bambi. Like, it has that one moment that everybody remembers, but then it's just like nothing. It's a deer growing up. That's the movie. You want to see a good version of Bambi? You watch Fox and the Hound. Fox and the Hound gets an A. Like, the first half hour of Fox and the Hound is very cutesy, very boring. It's almost on the level of Aristocats with how cutesy it gets. And there are definitely side characters that do nothing for the film. But after, like, that first half hour, Fox and the Hound gets, like, really fucking good. It would be high in S tier if it wasn't for that first half hour. Like, if you've ever had a pet, or especially if you've ever lost a pet, Fox and the Hound is the kind of movie that will just absolutely destroy you. I mean, it does hold back in one scene, and it probably shouldn't have. But other than that, like, my god, Fox and the Hound is just... It's a very somber piece, and it's a movie that relies entirely on emotions. And I really, really like that. The sequel is about the Fox and the Hound starting a band, which is an F. Seriously, who makes a sequel to Fox and the Hound? Let's see. Lady and the Tramp is a film that I don't remember much. I remember it looking very nice, but I remember, like, nothing else about it. I'm gonna have to rewatch that one, but this is where I remember that. And I remember liking this one just about as much. I watched the live-action version of 101 Dalmatians more than the animated version for some reason. The Jungle Book. This is a movie that seems to be very, very popular. It's one of the movies that Disney first made a remake of. And I'm not sure why. It even got into 1001 movies you must see before you die. And it's just an okay movie. Like, it's just okay. Like, it's like a not as good version of Tarzan. I mean, it has a couple of nice, fun songs, but, like, it's not a movie I go out of my way to watch ever. Like, and it's not like Snow White where it has this major historical significance. No, it's just okay. And, well, it's better than Oliver and Company, which has one really good song, and then it has another very bad song, and then it's just a straightforward, telling of, Oliver Twist. Like, I don't really know where to rank the straightforward tellings of stories, like, Alice in Wonderland. That gets a B, I guess? I mean, it's a telling of Alice in Wonderland, which is an absolute classic. But, like, it's not Disney's story. It's very straightforward. It's a very straightforward retelling of Alice in Wonderland. It has a few things from In the Looking Glass, and it led to the perpetual myth that the Red Queen is the Queen of Hearts, because the Queen of Hearts in Alice in Wonderland uses the Red Queen's quotes. They're not the same character. Like, the Red Queen is the Red Queen in chess. Like, chess sets used to be white versus red, not white versus black. Hello. I don't know what that was about. The visuals are definitely quite interesting. It's not my favorite interpretation of Alice in Wonderland. I mean, it's my favorite straightforward interpretation of Alice in Wonderland, but give me American McGee's any day. So, let's see. Lion King is one that I've sort of reviewed. I think I've gone about that enough. It is just an amazing film that you can rewatch it any day. Like, I grew up in the Renaissance era, so many of the Renaissance films are just going to be way, way up there for me. Meet the Robinsons is another one that I reviewed, but I'm actually not going to give that an S. It gets a B. Which might come as a surprise to anyone who's actually seen my review of it, because I talked it up very high. Meet the Robinsons has a lot of very, very great and very, very inspiring points. What it focuses on is very, very great. However, what it's not focusing on tends to kind of get left by the wayside, where the best Disney movies focus on everything and make everything just work. Meet the Robinsons, like I said, is structured a lot like a pilot movie more than a cinematic Disney movie. Like, it looks like the introduction to a television series, which is kind of sad that Meet the Robinsons never actually got a television series, because it introduces a bunch of characters that just don't get enough time to really shine. The characters all need a little bit more time. If they did, I would swear it would get a lot higher. But what it does well is the emotional moments and how inspiring it is. It's a movie that you just really, really love to watch. But not movie like Snow White is a movie that I appreciate a lot more than I watch. Meet the Robinsons is a movie that I watch a lot more than I appreciate. It has a really good villain, one of the most underrated villains in the Disney canon. Like, the bowler hat guy is up there. He's a classic one for me. And I do like how this movie seemed to unintentionally actually predict the future. You know, with Goob actually getting into unicorns and shit as time went on. That's just really, really funny to me. We got a lot to go, still. Let's see. A Bug's Life, that's a C. It's an okay movie. It's very okay. Like, here's how the Pixar rankings go. First, you get rid of all the bad ones, all the bad sequels, all the whatevers. Then everyone gets rid of Cars 1. Once all of the bad films are gone, and probably Brave too, everyone gets rid of A Bug's Life. Everyone. Like, there's nothing wrong with it. It's just okay. Like, that's all everybody says about A Bug's Life. It's just okay. Let's see. Dumbo, I actually don't remember a lot about. I have seen Dumbo, but I'm going to put it here because I don't feel confident enough going into even my opinions about it here. Like, these aren't like, full reviews, obviously. Sorry about that. But I do want to at least be confident in my opinions of these films. Like, I don't want to say I love a film when, I don't. Pinocchio is a very good film. Like, a really good film, actually. It's kind of unfocused. It's an episodic film. But considering how old it was, like, I expected Pinocchio to just be another Snow White. A very bog-standard animated kids film. But no, Pinocchio is actually really good. I mean, it toned down a lot from the book. And I do kind of want to see a world where Disney makes the book as... Like, they adapt the book straightforward. Because, like, in the book, Pinocchio actually kills Jiminy Cricket. Like, the book is dark as shit. I mean, the movie is dark as shit, too. But the book goes the extra fucking mile. Like, it's weird knowing that this is Italy's most beloved children's fairy tale when all kinds of disturbing shit happens in it. Then again, fairy tales and nursery rhymes, they all have pretty disturbing things in them. I like Pinocchio a lot as a film. Like, the only problem I would have with it is that, well, it's not really a problem, it's just not what I like the most. It's not my style. Like, it's an episodic film. Like, one small adventure happens, then it completely ends, and then they're on to the next one. It's kind of like the Odyssey, if that's a comparison. Like, there's a scene with Pleasure Island, they have the adventure there, then they escape Pleasure Island, and everything from Pleasure Island isn't really mentioned again. It's a journey, and it's quite a nice journey. It's just not something that I put in my top tier Disney films, but I would definitely watch it any day. In the category of appreciate a lot more than I'd watch, we have Fantasia. Fantasia gets a B with me. Like, I understand completely why this is some people's absolute favorite Disney film. Fantasia is absolutely beautiful. It is a film worthy of respect, and I'm glad that it's getting a lot of respect. I mean, in terms of a technical aspect of it, the only thing I don't like is the conductor in between sets. Not because he's an annoying presence, but because he says literally what the next film is going to be, describes it completely before it actually happens. But Fantasia is a movie that just goes completely against my taste. I need a narrative if I really want to enjoy a film. And Fantasia, while some segments do have narratives, it's hard for me to get hooked on a film when it's just colors and visuals. And that's what Fantasia is. I say that like it's an insult. It's more than just colors and visuals, but if you're a guy like me who needs a story, I would recommend seeing Fantasia once, and then probably not going back to it. It's probably why I'm not going to see Fantasia 2000 either, at any point. Because it's just not the style of film that speaks to me. Like, there are other Fantasia films, like, if you're wondering, the word Fantasia actually means something. It means putting animation to music. Like, Italy also has a Fantasia film called Allegro non troppo. I probably pronounced that wrong. It's just not a genre of films that really speaks to me in any sense of the word. Like I said, I appreciate it, I just don't watch it. Speaking of films that I don't appreciate as much as other people do, there's the Robin Hood. I think Robin Hood is an okay film. It's better than a lot of the other films that were coming out at the time. In fact, I'd put it like way up here. Like, Snow White gets the bottom, Jungle Book gets you. But like, Robin Hood, I know, is a very important film to a lot of people. Especially in the age of the internet. It helped people discover a lot about themselves, and I can totally respect that. It's just not a film that I watch all too often. To me, it's just a straightforward telling of the Robin Hood legend. It has quite a few memorable characters. It's just not something I go to all too often. Let's see. It definitely got better than the Arthurian mythos, because Sword in the Stone is actually a very flawed movie. I haven't watched it in quite some time, but I remember that it had a lot of problems. There were definitely some good things about it, but I like I said, there's a reason I haven't watched this one quite a lot, because there's not really much of a reason that I'd want to watch it again. Then, of course, we got Peter Pan. Peter Pan is a movie that has an okay, straightforward fairy tale plot, which would probably get it a B. Then it's got quite a few like racist moments with the Native Americans, and then there's the song "What Makes the Red Man Red," which is very insensitive in this day and age. And then it has Tinkerbell. And like I said, Tinkerbell is just like absolutely the worst character. I don't know if she's the worst in all of Disney, but like without Tinkerbell, it'd probably get a C. It would be in a B film held down by some awkward out of time moments. Tinkerbell drags it down to a D. So remember what I told you to do in my Strange Magic review. Strange Magic would also be an F. It's technically a Disney film. Let's see. Wreck-It Ralph, that's an A. Not the greatest film ever, but like I'm a gamer. Video games are my favorite medium, and I really appreciate all the references to retro video games. I really wish they went into like more different genre parodies. I'll be right back. I've got to do something. So, Wreck-It Ralph. Like I was saying, I appreciate all of the, I really wish they did go into more of the, worlds, see more video games. We only get to really see a few of them. I love all the video game references, and I love how they don't get in the way of the film. They really add to it. It's something that's very, very hard to do if the Emoji Movie isn't any, indication. If the sequel isn't any indication, it's something that's not easy to do. The characters in Wreck-It Ralph are all very endearing. And Wreck-It Ralph was the first film that I thought actually needed to be made in 3D, because I feel like the disparate art styles in all the different video games wouldn't have been very, it wouldn't have been brought to that next level if it was all in 2D. Like any of the other previous 3D movies, like Chicken Little could have been a 2D movie without any difference. Tangled could have been a 2D movie without any difference. Wreck-It Ralph, to me, was the first movie that I think actually needed to be made in 3D. With 3D animation. I don't know if I'm right or wrong about that. Like, Finding Nemo. Finding Nemo, if it was a 2D movie, would be the same. It would be the same quality. It would be just as good. And it is a very good film. It's very bright and colorful, and it has a lot of very interesting characters. I can't really say much about Finding Nemo, because, like, it's not a movie that has my passion like Hunchback of Notre Dame or even Tangled. But it's a film that was really, really good, and I remember it being overplayed to hell and back. Like, Finding Nemo, I remember being, like, this cultural dominant force. Like, toys, video games, commercials, everything. More so than any of the other Pixar films that came before it. Like, I believe Finding Nemo was the film that really, really put Pixar on the map. Like, Monsters, Inc. before it was okay. Like, I said that I said that Pixar films are much more adult than Disney films. Like with Finding Nemo, they usually star adult characters going through adult situations. I think Monster Inc. went kind of too far into the other direction. It's not something that kids can't be interested in, but I really think that it's something that isn't going to appeal to kids more than other I don't think it's going to be something that appeals to kids as much as other Pixar films. Like, it stars a couple of basically factory workers being worried that their power plant is going out of business because of an energy crisis. It's not impossible to communicate that to kids, but it's probably not an easy task. And also, there's Boo. Like, she's cute, but, like, she doesn't have a character. I think if Boo actually had a personality other than curious kid that just says boo a lot, Monsters Inc. would have been brought a lot higher. Like, it's not one of the Pixar films I'm the most fond of. Nah, besides WALL-E and Soul, you gotta give that to Ratatouille. Ratatouille is just a beautiful film. Even if you're not into cooking, it really does showcase the creative process very well. And being a critic, I obviously relate to what Ego says at the end. Like, it's a very moving speech, even if you're not into doing criticism like I do. Ratatouille is just a absolutely beautiful film. Like, I don't know why, but every time that Disney makes a film in Paris, it always turns out spectacular. Hunchback of Notre Dame, Beauty and the Beast, Ratatouille. Like, Disney needs to stop making movies that star chickens, or even have chickens in them. Like, oh yeah, that's another thing I don't like about Moana. Moana had two animal sidekicks. There was a cute little pig and the most annoying chicken in history. And for some reason, they just put the pig on an island and decided to continue the rest of the movie with the most annoying chicken in history. But yeah, Disney needs to stop making movies with chickens, and they need to start making more movies in France. Because that is the weird way that Disney works, apparently. I can see some people not being so into Ratatouille because it definitely seems like a more low-key style of film. I wouldn't exactly call it a love it or hate it. It's a movie that you're either going to love it or think is just okay. Which might be pretty much anything in my C tier list, with the exception of A Bug's Life. Everybody thinks A Bug's Life is okay. Okay, it really distracts me that they use the live-action poster for Mulan. I'm going to assume that this is the animated version that they're talking about, because these are the animated films, but this is the live-action poster. And the live-action Mulan doesn't even get an F. It gets lower than an F because Disney has aligned themselves with atrocities in the real world. On top of ruining, like, one of the best films ever. Mulan is just a really great film. The aesthetics, like, I don't like it as much aesthetically as some of the other films in S tier, but the characters and the music are really where Mulan shines. All of the characters, with the exception of the villain, are just really, I say endearing a lot. They're all really interesting. From Shang to Mulan to the other army guys, which I don't exactly remember the names at the moment. It's been a while since I've watched a lot of these films, and Mulan is one that I've got to watch again. What I really like Mulan for, though, is that it takes a plot that I usually absolutely hate. Like, it's the boys versus girls plot. It's a plot that's been done time and time again, and each and every time, it's usually a failure, because here's how it works. We have these characters. Like, there's boys that suddenly decide that all of the girls can't play their game, even though they were perfectly fine letting the girls play their games in other episodes. They suddenly become sexist for no good reasons. So everyone decides to have a contest. Whoever wins the contest decides who is better, boys versus girls. And in every single time of this plot, the girls always win. And that proves that the sexes are equal because stupid. Mulan manages to avoid that by having the actual problem be something that's, like, serious. Like, the military. Like, it's not, like, just about social justice reasons. Mulan gets into this not just to prove her pride as a woman. She does this to make sure her father, who is old, doesn't die at war. She actually proves that she's heroic. Like, Mulan is definitely a movie that could get a lot of analysis, and I might do that at some point, because it's a movie that really tackles gender roles a lot better than most movies, especially modern Disney movies that do it all horribly. I really love Mulan, though. It's something that I can't praise enough, I would say. Nightmare Before Christmas, I'd also give an S ranking, but I can't really say much about it. It's a really, really good film. I can't say much more about that. Same with Toy Story 2. It's a really, really, really good film. Like, there's not much I could say about that. Toy Story 1, it's like Snow White in that it was very, very trailblazing. But it's not the greatest movie, but I like it more than Snow White. Maybe because I grew up with it. Like, maybe in 100 fucking years, Toy Story is going to be on the same level as Snow White because nobody then would have grown up with the original Toy Story. But I don't know. Maybe. Not much I could say about that. And Toy Story 3... is it here, or is Toy Story 3? Where'd you go? Even in this small amount of things, I can't see anything. So, Toy Story 3, like, if it does turn up in my mind, you guys probably... yeah, here it is. Toy Story 3 goes somewhere in the middle. It does retread a lot of Toy Story 2. Like, if you really analyze it, it does do a lot of what Toy Story 2 did, but I think it does hold up enough well on its own. And yes, the ending is very, very, very sad and touching, and it's why I'm not so eager to watch Toy Story 4. Like, it's definitely something that feels like you should have left as a trilogy, but it's not entirely fair until I watch Toy Story 4, which, unlike some of the films on the haven't seen, it's something that I would probably see eventually. Okay. Finding Dory, it's another one that's just okay. I watched it in theaters, I liked it. Not really having much of a desire to see it again. Not much I could say there. James and the Giant Peach is also a B tier. I watched it a lot as a kid. I didn't know it was Disney. But it's not something that exactly I really want to rewatch. It gets a little too fantastical, like, the events don't seem to take place in much of a reality. And I mean, like, it's Roald Dahl. It's a Roald Dahl work, and that's what he was great at. But I think James and the Giant Peach is a little bit messier than Willy Wonka or even Matilda. Like, James and the Giant Peach, his parents were eaten by a rhino. It's just said, like, we're supposed to know what that means. Like, are we supposed to assume that they went on a safari? No, they were eaten by a rhino that happens to be an evil storm cloud. Like, James and the Giant Peach is a very silly film, and once in a while, you can be in the mood for silly, but it's not something that I'm just gonna watch any day. I'm not always in that kind of mood. And as you might be able to hear, my voice is really going kaploot. A Goofy movie is also alright. If it's on, I'll watch it, but it's not one that I'd really go to seek out. I like the songs in it a lot, and I think the character dynamic between Goofy and Max are really, really good. And here's a film that I didn't want to give to B. Onward. Onward is a film that's against itself. It has a lot of ideas, and a lot of those ideas work against itself. Fantasy creatures living in a modern, everyday reality is quite an interesting idea, and I'd like to see that done quite well. The problem in Onward is that the fantasy creatures act like human beings. Fantasy creatures in a modern world is a good idea. Human beings acting like human beings in the modern everyday world is not an idea at all. And there's definitely a reason in Onward why the people have abandoned the old ways, because they have found technology. While you can definitely explain that, you can't make that interesting. The film gets more and more interesting as people start discovering the old ways. And I'm surprised that nobody making this movie actually saw the issue with that. It's an idea that hurts the film's enjoyment. And I mean, like, there's a lot I like about it. The brother dynamic is just fucking amazing. Probably better than any of the other Disney films. I don't know if any of them actually go for a brother dynamic. And yes, I am using Pixar interchangeably with Disney because convenience. I like all the nods to Dungeons & Dragons. I'm also a D&D nerd as much as I am a gaming nerd. In fact, recently I've been on a journey to learn the GURPS system, which is a trip and a half. And there's a lot about this movie that definitely does speak to me. Like, the learning how to drive and being absolutely terrified being on the highway kind of deal. Unlike the main character in this film, I don't think that I've ever gotten over that, though. But, like, Onward is a film that could have been very creative and amazing. Instead, it became a film that holds itself back. And that's just very unfortunate. However, Onward has set itself up to have, like, an amazing sequel. Like, if we get that Pixar film where these fantasy creatures have relearned the old ways and just have this modern world with magic where they act like fantasy fairy tale creatures. Now that is the Onward that I want to see. We'll also put Incredibles there in B. The Incredibles is another film that's kind of like that for me, that has these great ideas that hold itself back in a different way. The draw of The Incredibles is that it's a superhero family. Unfortunately, most of the film just focuses on Mr. Incredible himself, and the family is kind of tangential to that. So the idea of a superhero family never really forms as well as it could. And I really do wish it was a story about all of the family members having their own conflict, you know? We do get a little bit of that, but it's a film, once again, that probably could have used a sequel. I know it did get a sequel. I'm probably going to watch it, but I hear that the sequel is disappointing, which is unfortunate. Like, a lot of people do rank Incredibles quite high, but it as you can see, it's probably a little bit lower on my superhero list. On my Pixar list. Of all the ones in B, it's definitely my favorite of the Pixar films in the B rank. Actually, I put Onward, like, right before that. Then Toy Story, Monsters, Inc., Finding Dory. Yeah, that'll work. So, let's see what we have here. Brother Bear is the odd man out. It's a D. Like, people seem to really, really not like that film. And the character Coda can quite be annoying. I agree with that. But I never really got the absolute hatred for Brother Bear. Like, it looks beautiful. Like, it really, really does. I mean, the talking animals don't really annoy me. Like, if you're annoyed by talking animals, why are you watching a Disney film? The Phil Collins songs, though, are kind of awkward in this movie, especially when he's singing over very, very emotional moments. It's definitely not the most competent film, but it's not really much I can say about it. It's not one I seek out. Maybe if I watch it again, I'll be annoyed to hell and back and I'll go down to F. But Brother Bear is... I don't have any ill will towards it. I suppose that's a good description of the D. These are movies that I don't like, but I don't have any ill will towards. It seems like they're also missing Balt here, which is in the Disney canon. All Disney animated movies, you're missing a few. Balt would be on Haven't Seen. I saw it once on television, so I've only seen parts of it. Seemed okay. Inside Out gets an A. Yeah, I guess an A. Inside Out is a movie that I absolutely loved the first time I saw it. And it was kind of like Frozen, in the exact same way. After I saw it, I thought it was greatest movie ever, favorite Pixar. And as time went on, started getting less and less excited about it. Unlike Frozen, though, it didn't have any major actual structural problems. Inside Out is just a special film that got less and less special the more that I watched it. It really delves into emotions quite nicely. It's a well-made film, it's bright and colorful, and it has a lot of nice emotional moments. But, I don't know, I do feel like I really did overrate it when I first saw it. But it's still a film that I'll definitely watch every now and again. It's very impressive and very, very creative. I think it's one of the most creative most creative Pixar films, at least. Even though it does use ideas that have been done before, it does very, very nice things with them. And I think it's also a very useful film in how it communicates emotional maturity. The concept of it. Coco is a film that a lot of people don't like, and I have no idea why. It has the twist villain thing, and that's why it's not an S, but it's a film that I really like. I've only watched a couple times, so I haven't seen any problems with it yet besides the twist villain. Although, in that case, even I will say that it is one of the better twist villains that I have seen. I just think it's a very well-made film. I don't have much to say about it. Maybe if I had more connections to Mexican culture or that specific holiday, I would. But I can't say either way. It's just a film that I really do like. Emperor's New Groove is also an A-tier film for me. A lot of people really love Emperor's New Groove, and I'm glad to see that it's gotten such a resurgence in popularity. When it first came out, it didn't have any sort of cultural dominance. It was just another Disney film. But nowadays, it seems like everybody loves this film, and it's a great film. So I guess the question is, why isn't it S tier? The reason it's not S tier is a couple of reasons. First, the art style, it just doesn't speak to me as well as some of the other films. And that ties into my other reasons. It doesn't feel as grand as some of the biggest Disney films. WALL-E. There's a ton of space, and it's a big, huge adventure. Same with Lion King and Beauty and the Beast and Tangled. These movies feel very big. Where, in contrast, Emperor's New Groove feels very, very small. And that's definitely because of the genre. It's a road trip movie, which they usually don't get very big. And I'm not the biggest fan of road trip movies. But Emperor's New Groove, its comedy and its characters really, really dominate the film. They are very strong personalities that stick in my head. In fact, because of Emperor's New Groove, every single Patrick Warburton role in history is now Kronk in my head. It is just Kronk playing another role. Part of that is because Patrick Warburton only really plays one role, but still, he's just that ubiquitous of a character. It is a really, really good film. Let's see here. Zootopia, that also gets an A. It would be an S if not for that terrible, terrible twist villain. Zootopia has the worst twist villain in any of the Disney films, so I'm going to stand by that. But it is an insanely creative film. And it's like WALL-E, it's a very relevant film. It's a film about social tensions between different classes of people. Like, a lot of people say the film is about racism, but no, it's about, like, any two classes of people. Racism is just the most obvious and apparent. You can also have it being... you can also see the metaphors and conflicts between male and female. It's just about social tensions in general. There's also some class stuff in there as well. It's a film that's very, very relevant, and in a way it can make it a tad hard to watch. Like, it's a movie that can hit too close to home depending on who you are, and I can understand if some people might have a hard time watching it because of that. And as the real world becomes crazier and crazier and crazier, it's a film that I myself have a harder time watching. But as a movie in and of itself, it's really good, and more importantly, it's really, really smart. Like, it's everything that Pocahontas wasn't. Like, Zootopia is another movie that I'm not confident in talking about here because it's something that really requires picking and choosing words carefully. Mulan, Zootopia, and Pocahontas. Those are the three movies where you really gotta pick and choose your words. It's not good for off-the-cuff kind of deal to really talk about them in depth. I can give you the basics because I've talked about these topics a million fucking times already, but even still, I'm not entirely confident going off script because it's very easy to get yourself hurt. Sorry about that, I had to do something real quick. Anyway, we only got a few more to go here. Lilo and Stitch is another one of the obvious S's. Like, it probably goes pretty damn high. Yeah. Lilo and Stitch is just a very deep and very good movie. Like, it can't get enough praise. Everything about Lilo and Stitch is just amazing. The deep connections between the sisters. I really, really do love the plot. I love all of the characters. Lilo is just one of the most wonderful lead characters in the entire Disney canon. In fact, Lilo and Stitch is really lucky. Like, a lot of these movies have bad sequels and whatever. Lilo and Stitch, I think, is the only single entity in all of Disney that's basically bad 100. Like, it had a couple of sequels, and I think the sequels were really good. It had a TV show. The TV show was good. It even had video games, and the video games were good. Like, almost no Disney film can claim that. It is just an amazing, amazing film. Like, a lot of people speak highly of the Renaissance, but I think the era after that, the experimental era, might really be my favorite of the Disney eras, because it created the most interesting Disney films. Like, most of the Renaissance era, it was just, straightforward Disney fairy tales. In the Renaissance era, they got out of their comfort zone. And sure, like, sometimes the Chicken Little, it didn't pan out. But other times, they got so much better than they would have at any other point. Like, Treasure Planet is S. A lot of people talk down Treasure Planet. And I don't know why. Like, a lot of people will shit on the genre, like, they're going through space, but they have Victorian-style boats. And it's like, is that really a problem? Like, is it? I mean, I can understand if it's a little bit confusing, but I don't know. Like, I like the aesthetic. I like the art style. Like, is it a little bit pointless? Well, maybe. If they didn't go into space, it would just be a straightforward telling of Treasure Island. And, I mean, Disney has done dozens and dozens of straightforward tellings. Like, the point of remaking things is to put your own spin on them. You know, like, this is something that I want to talk about at some point, but there's this idea I have that you can make a remake or an adaptation a little bit too faithful. Like, I'm working on a Little Nemo review, and a big issue with that movie is that they're too faithful to the Little Nemo comics. In the comics, every single comic strip ends with Little Nemo waking up in bed. And they don't exactly change that for the movie. So in the movie, at certain aspects, Little Nemo just wakes up in bed, and it completely breaks the pace of a movie. Like, when the original Treasure Island was written, there was, like, very few ideas of space travel. And especially, like, space pirates and space adventures. And it's interesting seeing a Treasure Planet take on that. And it leads to a very unique aesthetic. Like, this is Treasure Planet's look and feel. But what really, really elevates Treasure Planet for me is the characters. Like, even the side characters, like, it's been a while since I've seen this, but, like, the dog professor, the cat captain, I really do remember liking them. But Jim, the main character, he is just, like, really relatable. I mean, for one, like, this film cuts harder than a lot of Disney films. Like, his father didn't die, he just outright left, which is not something you could say in most Disney films. And he has, and the relationship he gets with the cook, I'm blanking on the name. It's just something that it's something that I think is better than any other Disney film in that regard. Like, a lot of films do go into the relationship between the parent and the child, or some kind of relationship like that. And I think Treasure Planet really does nail it the best. Like, Treasure Planet is another film that I'd probably go out of my way to really just praise. Like, if you do want these videos, please let me know in the comments below. Because I would really like to talk about a lot of these films, you know, without just winging it, going deeper and deeper into the overall themes and the aesthetics, and how much I just really love some of these. I think Treasure Planet is amazing. I hate that it bombed, and not just because it stopped Disney from doing 2D stuff, but because Treasure Planet is a movie that has a ton of passion into it. Like, if nothing else, you can agree that a lot of passion went into that film. Another film that usually gets flack on, Atlantis. Okay, like, Atlantis, I don't know why people hate this movie. Like, a lot of people did hate this movie, maybe they still do. Like, I mean, first we'll start with what everybody praises. The animation is absolutely fantastic. Phenomenal and fantastic. Yes, it is both of those things. But once again, it comes down to the characters. I've said this a lot. The camaraderie that they show is just amazing. Like, each one of the characters, like, you remember them. They have their own amazing identity. You want to see an ongoing series with these guys, and then you remember that the Atlantis sequel exists, and it ruined everything. But Atlantis is a movie that just speaks to me in every single way. Like, Milo has always been the Disney main character I related to the most. Like, I liked Aladdin a lot. I was never anything like Aladdin. I liked Jim a lot from Treasure Planet. I wasn't as openly adventurous or even as brooding as him. I was Milo. That's who I was growing up, Milo. The awkward guy who is into these weird things that nobody else gives a shit about. And those things sometimes were ancient and lost civilizations. Just the quest of trying to get them. Like, this movie can come across a little bit unfocused. Like, you don't even get into Atlantis until like the last half of the movie. But the way to get to Atlantis, like, going through all of these traps, is an adventure in itself. And yeah, Atlantis does have a few plot holes that I kind of do and don't forget. I kind of do and don't forgive. Like, one of the main plot points in the movie is that the Atlanteans have forgotten all of their technology because the city sank underwater, which doesn't make sense because the people are still alive, and they were alive back when the city sank. Like, these are the same people. Kita, the princess in this film, she was a child when the city sank, and she probably could read back then, but she can't anymore. Like, it's definitely a plot hole, but like I said, when a film is really, really good in other aspects, those plot holes become ignorable. Like, I still keep them in check, and they're definitely strikes against the movie, but there's so much other good to the movie that I just don't care. Like, there's no such thing as a perfect movie. There's just a movie with positives that outweigh their flaws, or vice versa. I probably should have saved that for the finale, because the other movies aren't the most overwhelming kind of thing. Up is really good. I don't have much else to say about that. The first 10 minutes are S, and everything after that is very, very good. Like, I like all of the characters. The villain's a little, It's a good movie. I don't have much else to say about Up. Tarzan. A lot of people shit on Phil Collins, but honestly, to me, Tarzan has one of the better soundtracks. Like, not the absolute best, but it's a soundtrack that I come back to a lot. I know a lot of people don't like the style of Disney films where it's not actually the characters singing. And I can definitely see why people wouldn't like that. It's definitely better here than it was in Brother Bear at the very least. The songs enhance the emotions, and it's not a problem to me. It is kind of annoying or lesser that all the songs are the same genre. Like, they're all done by Phil Collins, and the film probably would have been a little bit better if there was a bit more of a variety. That I can understand. Tarzan, I would say, is high up in the B tier. High up in the B tier. It's a movie that I do like. I don't know why it became like such this... I don't know why it became this film that Disney was trying to push a lot. They made a lot of video games. They made a lot of spin-offs. It was one of the few shows that got its own full cartoon. Got sequels. They really tried to market the hell out of Tarzan. And it was definitely a step down from a lot of the Renaissance films. but it was still pretty good. And they definitely did a lot of great things with its visuals. It just never struck the gold that a lot of the films that came before it did. And finally, we have Hercules. Hercules gets an A. The only thing I don't like about Hercules is, well, the main character Hercules. He's quite bland, but everything else about the film I really do love. Like, in a way, it's like Atlantis. The Greek mythology, that's something that just hits me in a sweet spot, you know? It's one of the things that I really like. Like the ancient civilizations of Atlantis, video games and Wreck-It Ralph. It's something that really spoke to me from the start, so this film already had good points in its favor, although Onward did squander that, so it's not a guarantee. The other characters in the film, though, even the smaller ones like Zeus and Pain and Panic, they really had a great presence in the film. Everybody loves the villain, James Woods, who plays James Woods, playing Hades. He is, I don't know if I'd call him the funniest Disney villain. You got the bowler hat guy and you got Yzma. But he's definitely one of them. Like, he's in the top 3 of the funniest Disney villains. But unlike the other 2 of the funny Disney villains I just mentioned, he's also intimidating. It's one of the few Disney villains that does strike that balance between intimidating and funny. Which is a very hard balance to strike. Let's see. I actually do like the songs a lot. The song that Phil sings isn't the best. It's charming, it's cute, but it's not really fantastic. But the other songs in the film, like, I do think that Hercules' soundtrack really does hold up. Like, it's a lot of gospel music, which makes actual sense because the movie is about gods. Like, I don't know any other genre that would work better than gospel music for a story about gods. I don't know what else I can say about it. Like, I definitely want to go into a lot of these films individually and go in much deeper with them. Even if, like, most of them aren't absolutely so bad that they get an atrocity, or even so good that I would have given them an admirable back in the day. But, like, most of the Disney films, at the very least, are interesting, with the exception of A Bug's Life. A Bug's Life is not interesting. But most of these films at least have something to say about them, and I guess that's why people still come to Disney, because even though they have been making a lot of very poor and very morally questionable choices as of late. I'm actually kind of saddened, not because of the quality of their films. Like, the quality of the films is getting back on track, it seems. Especially as they're making less and less of these live-action remakes. No, I'm getting kind of sad because Disney as a corporate entity is becoming more and more villainous in a way. It is definitely quite sad. Like, if you want me to go deeper into my thoughts on any of these films, I might consider making, like, a full-fledged video on them. Like, admirable animations, animated atrocities, they're just title names because that's how YouTube works. Like, if something's interesting enough, I'll take a look at it. I'll make a video about it. You know, like, I made a couple of years back a review on The Beginner's Guide, which is a video game, and this is an animation channel primarily. Like, if something is interesting to me, I will talk about it. Like, you're probably not going to get much out of me from the C's or even the D tier, but, like, A, B, S, and even F, they're films that are at the very least interesting. To some extent. Like, some you're probably never going to get a video of me about, like, the Aristocats. Like, Chicken Little is a worse film, but it has things you can talk about. Meanwhile, the Aristocats is just boring, and the only kind of films that I don't like talking about are boring films. Now, I really do need to stop, because if I don't, I'm going to lose my voice for a week. I've been talking quite a long time now. So I will all see you in the future, whenever that might be. Bye.